They started when they sold.
We had some guys last night apparently that came in, gave a donation.
Really? Oh, that's better. I don't know. Yeah, okay. I guess they came in, gave a donation, said hello, and went back on the tractor. So that's pretty good. My name is Patty Vold. I live east of Ponoka, and I am working with Let's Talk Alberta. Usually we give the airline instructions as to where the exits and the bathrooms are. I'm just going to go there over there somewhere. Louder? So I got to be closer, or Chris has got to figure me out. So I'll just lean. I'll pretend I'm leaning. So welcome everyone. We're going through a bit of a rough patch, but the eye on the prize, everybody. Stuff will go by both sides, and things will be forgotten. We just got to keep moving forward. So tonight we have several speakers, but first we're going to open in a word of prayer. Jasper, take your hat off. Father God, we thank you for being here tonight, and we thank you for the beautiful weather that seating could be accomplished. And we just thank you for this beautiful land we call home. We ask tonight that you be in the words of all those who are speaking and be with us and keep us safe as we go home. But most of all, let us keep our eyes on you and what you are directing us to do. And we thank you for all these things in your name. Amen. Who's first? Oh, Tanya. Miss Tanya Clemens will be joining us because she's done seating. Oh, your dad's done. She's usually on the combine. I did that too. So you're from Blackie?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's from Blackie. She'll fill you in on the rest.
Yeah, it's been a couple hectic, crazy days, and there's lots of stuff going on in. Is that good? Good for volume?
That's fine. That microphone isn't for this room. It's only for
It's just for his feed.
So you just
Yeah.
have to speak loudly.
Yeah. So apologies if I'm a little bit more scattered today. I just feel like there's been a lot of big things happening the last couple days, and my head's just been spinning the last little bit and processing it. But I'm not losing any hope. Like, there's lots of really great things in the making as well. So we'll talk about some of those today, and probably in the question and answer as well. I know the writ dropped today, so that forces the referendum campaign period. And then we also recently had the announcing of a referendum to have a referendum, which is also very interesting. And there's lots of back and forth on both sides of that. But what I know about this is that the courts can weigh in and the politicians can weigh in, but it doesn't change the conversation. It doesn't stop the conversation from happening. And that's why we're doing events like this, is to continue the conversation and continuing educating Albertans on the merits of a sovereign Alberta. And there is a copious amount of merits. I want you to think for a minute too about referendum day, because it is still October 19th. That is still the imminent task that we have to successfully complete, is that first referendum day. If we don't win that one, the rest doesn't matter. So that one is still paramount in our minds. And I want you to think for a minute about that day when you walk into that referendum and you have that ballot in your hand, and the significance of what that day is going to mean. The thousands and thousands of people who have spent the last decades and decades of effort to get us to the point where we actually get to have a referendum on a referendum for Alberta independence, which is a pretty cool thing to be a part of. And it comes with some responsibility, a whole lot of responsibility, I think. Before you check that box, and it's just that tiny little box and a tiny little piece of paper, and it might seem insignificant, I hope that we learn after tonight and just really take that into heart, that it is a very, very significant day. And it would not be doing it justice if we didn't go in there with responsibility and education and intention. So I'm not here tonight as a politician or economist or constitutional lawyer. I have none of those credentials. I am a farmer, a teacher, a mom, and someone who I'm sure, like many of you, just really, really love Alberta. Whether I'm out helping fill the cedar or driving the combine at harvest, which is my favorite, there are moments on the farm where I feel everything is just very, very simple. You're focused on the work, the land, the weather, the people around you, the task at hand. You're not thinking about Ottawa or politics or anything of that jurisdiction. You're thinking about doing your job well and building something that lasts. And I think that sense of building something real, something earned, is something a lot of people in this province very much understand. And when I step back from that and look at where we are today, I've had to start asking myself some important questions. not political ones necessarily, but practical ones, the kind that affect how people actually live their lives from day to day. So I have 5 questions, and I apologize if you've heard these 5 questions before. I apologize that you're going to hear them again tonight, but I also think that it's really great just to keep on reflecting on them and hopefully share them around and get other people to reflect on them. Because I'm not necessarily giving you the answers to them. I hope that people will arrive at that on their own after they put some thought and education into it. The first question is whether we truly are better off now than we were a generation ago. Not in a general sense, but in real day-to-day living. Can young families afford homes the way they used to? Do people feel confident taking risks, starting businesses, building something here? Do our kids look ahead and believe that their lives will be better than ours? Because for a long time in Alberta, that wasn't even a question. It was simply assumed. We kept getting better and better. But now I think it's worth asking honestly whether that assumption still holds. The second question is, who actually makes the decisions that shape life here for Albertans? Because when you look closely, many of the biggest decisions affecting Alberta don't happen in Alberta. They happen somewhere else, quite a long ways away. Policies around energy, pipelines, emissions, and regulations are developed at a federal level. And when they show up here, they show up in some very real ways with some very serious consequences. They affect whether projects go ahead or don't, whether investment comes here or goes somewhere else, and ultimately what it costs to live and work in this province. Even when Albertans vote one way provincially, those decisions can still be overridden. And that's the structure we're operating within, and it has some real consequences. The third question is financial, and it's one that becomes difficult to ignore once you really look at it. If we keep giving more than we receive, how long is that sustainable? Because since 1961, Alberta has sent over $800 billion more to Ottawa than we've received anything back for in the terms of goods and services. That's roughly $28 billion leaving this province every year. And if you average that across our population, that's about $6,000 that leaves per Albertan to Ottawa for nothing coming back. So a family of 4, that's $24,000 in services that are just gone. And those numbers, when you're talking in billions, seem so large that they stop feeling real. And I think we get a little disconnected with how much money that actually is. So I kind of created this analogy of trying to visualize what $1 billion looks like. Imagine instead of moving through the government systems, that money was actually physically collected, that a semi-truck pulled up to your house with a container pulled behind it, and it wanted to collect the $6,000 per Albertan from you in $20 bills. So you would have to go to your stash of $20 bills and count out 300 of them and hand those over. And then that person would go to your spouse and collect the same 300 $20 bills, and to each of your 2 kids. And then they go to your neighbors, and then every single person in your community until they've hit every single Albertan in the province. And what that ends up looking like is every 2 shipping containers that gets filled with $20 bills from Albertans is $1 billion. So by the end of this collection process, there would be 56 semis full of Alberta's $20 bills that would drive out of the province headed to Ottawa. And the worst part about that is that half of those 28 shipping containers would go directly to Quebec. And that's where the money would stay. So it's a little bit abstract, but hopefully it gives you kind of an idea of the amount of money that Albertans are sending away and getting nothing back for. The fourth question is one I hear often, and it's why not just fix this within Canada? And I think that's a fair question, but to answer it honestly, you have to look at what's already been tried. And probably like way more interesting than listening to me take you through this timeline is to actually get Cory Morgan's book, The Sovereigntist Handbook. That's where I got all my information from for this part anyways. It takes you through the whole historical timeline of how much we have tried. Right from the very beginning, Alberta didn't enter Confederation on equal footing. We actually didn't even get to negotiate our way in. We were just told, you're in. In the early 1900s, it was made very clear that the wealth of the prairies was going to support the activities of the East. And it took until 1930 for Alberta to gain control of its own natural resources. And that was decades after we became a province. Then in 1947, when the big oil discovery in Leduc happened, Alberta really began generating some serious wealth. And from that point forward, the relationship with Ottawa shifted, because once Alberta became economically significant, there was a growing interest in controlling and redistributing that wealth. By the 1980s, we had the tension coming from the National Energy Program, which drove investment out of the province, canceled projects, and affected families across Alberta. And what's important about that period is that it wasn't described as an unintended consequence. It was described as intentional policy, because the feds saw that Alberta was rising and becoming an economic powerhouse, and they needed some way to cut us back down and humble us. After that, there were attempts to address these imbalances. We had the Meech Lake and the Charlottetown Accords. Both of those failed because to open up the Constitution, especially for Alberta, is basically impossible. We had that, the referendum, the equalization referendum in 2021, where we voted overwhelmingly in favor of it. And it was kind of funny, actually, because Jason Kenney must have known our constitutional laws and maybe was laughing at us, but there was no way that we could actually put that into the Constitution. The first hurdle you have to jump through is you would need 7 out of 10 provinces representing 50% of the population to agree with you. And since Quebec and Ontario have 60% of the population, you need one of them on board. Second, if you pass that hurdle, you need a majority vote in the House of Commons. Next one is you need a majority vote in the Senate. And then if you somehow miraculously got through those 3 hurdles, the fourth one is a killer, because Quebec basically gets a de facto veto vote. So that makes meaningful structural change extremely difficult, pretty much impossible. But continuing on the timeline, in the 1990s, we had the Reform Party, which emerged out of Western frustration, and it had the goal of fixing the system from within. Didn't quite play out that way. Then we had the Firewall Letter, which was in 2001. People like Stephen Harper, Ted Morton authored it, and what they were asking for back in 2001 was pensions, policing, taxation, for Alberta to have control over those. That was 25 years ago, and we are still asking for the exact same thing. So fixing it from within is not working so great. Most recently, we had the Fair Deal panel, and they asked for fairness, and it was ignored. Then we had the equalization referendum, again, where 62% of us voted in favor of ending equalization, again, ignored. So when people ask why not fix it, I think the honest answer is that Alberta has been trying to do that exact same thing for a very long time. And if you watch the debate between Jason Kenney and Keith Wilson on Monday night, basically Jason Kenney's arguments, from what I took from it, was we just need to keep trying. We need to try harder. We need to work together and try harder. I don't think that's going to change anything. I think we've been doing that for about 120 years. And that leads to the 5th question, which is the one I've spent the most time thinking about. What happens if we just do nothing? What happens if we have a crazy couple days and we're feeling really tired, or we get disheartened and we just decide we do nothing? Because doing nothing sometimes feels like the safer option, kind of like the devil you know, but it isn't neutral. The country is changing. We do not have clear constitutional protection for property rights. That's a big one. There are ongoing debates around freedom of expression and where those lines are drawn. Decision-making continues to become more centralized in a country that is incredibly diverse in how people live and work. And none of this happens overnight. It's been happening gradually until one day things feel very different. And at some point you have to ask yourself, which carries more risk? Continuing down a path that you have very little control over, or taking responsibility of shaping something closer to home. For me, it comes down to the certainty of where Canada is headed is far scarier than any uncertainty of forming a new nation. And that's what this really comes down to for me. It's not anger or frustration, but responsibility and courage. Responsibility for what kind of province we want to leave to the next generation. For me, my kids are always in the forefront of my mind. I would love for them to have the opportunities that I had when I was younger, or that my parents had when they were young. Responsibility for whether opportunity still exists here, even in a meaningful way. responsibility for whether the things that built this place can still be built again. Because when a referendum comes, there will be that moment when you walk into that polling station and you're handed that ballot, and it will feel simple. Just that piece of paper, a question, a box to check, or multiple choice, or however it's going to be phrased, might be a little more complicated than just a check. Because everything we've talked about tonight, the history, the decades and decades of effort, the people who built lives here, the thousands and thousands of people who have tried over and over again to make this work, all comes down to that one moment. And I think when that day comes, it deserves more than a quick decision. It deserves a pause, a real long pause, long enough to understand what you're part of, because moments like that don't come around very often. Most generations don't get asked a question like that ever. So when I picture that moment, I know I won't be thinking about politics or arguments. I will be thinking about what kind of life is actually possible here, what I want for Alberta. I will think about whether the next generation will have the same chance to build something meaningful, to work hard and see it pay off, to raise a family in a place that feels stable, predictable, and free. And I think about the responsibility we carry in that moment, because whatever direction Alberta takes, it will be because people made that choice deliberately, not by drifting, but by deciding. So when that day comes, I hope you take the time to understand what's in front of you, to get educated beforehand, to think about your family, and to think about your future and the future of Alberta. Thank you. Cory's coming up next? Oh, okay. Well, I kind of introduced Cory a little bit. Cory Morgan, you'd recognize him from the Western Standard, author of the Sovereigntist Handbook, which I actually think everyone should read. I've read it a couple times now too. So, thank you.
Link's in the comments.
What was that?
The link is in the comments for your book.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. The link is in the comments. Thank you. And thank you all for coming out on a beautiful night. I know there's always something better to do when it comes to the weather like this. And, it takes a conscious effort to get up and go and take part in something. And you guys did. You're the movers and shakers in town. You're the ones who want to do something about it. And you're looking to see how you can better do it. And this is it. This is the time we've been pushing towards, working towards. We got, 4.5 months before a vote on a referendum. It's not the question we wanted. It's not necessarily the path we wanted to get to it. But when the hell was anything good in life easy? It doesn't stop us. We're Albertans. The path curves, we'll curve. If a hurdle gets in the way, we'll jump over it. We've got this question. It's not perfect, but it offers us an opportunity. It offers us a campaign. It offers us the chance to get out and ask that question and get Albertans to vote to move things closer to full independence, which is what we got to do. Keith Wilson's kind of said it correctly in some ways. Let's look at realistically, this is a good trial run in a way. This is such a big question and important one. I know we want to be independent yesterday, but we might have to wait a little longer. We want to do it right. If we can't win a non-binding question, we wouldn't have won the binding one. So we get a chance here. Let's win this one and win it strong. And then we will get the chance for the big one. And we'll be going into it a lot more confident, a lot better trained. It's just some people have been frustrated. Some people have been throwing their hands up, maybe thinking this one isn't worth campaigning on. And no, quite the contrary. It is what we've been working towards. It's just not in exactly the form we hoped. But we will make the most of it. Look, it is a de facto independence question. The whole country is talking about it. In all of our lives, we've never seen the independence issue in Alberta as strong, as debated, as top of mind as it is right now. And it's going to be like that for 4.5 months. We're putting this country on notice. And then we can really put them on notice on the 19th. But we got to do it right. This is a critical time. So these came in. That young fella brought them by. I like this flag. I don't have a problem with this. I really don't. This is something we got to remember as we campaign. Kenny set the tone in the debate in a way, and you can see where it's going to go. And you can see what he wants to do to us. We're not moving away from the Canadian flag. We're just moving into a new future, and it's going to be blue. The Canadian flag will still be part of our history. I've still got respect for it. I've got nothing but gratitude for the people of the past generations who built what is here that I've been able to enjoy and take advantage of up to this point. And we've got to make that clear to people. This isn't a negative campaign. In fact, We're protecting what all those people sacrificed and did to build for us, because now it is being threatened. And we're trying to preserve a part of it. It doesn't mean neglecting Canadian history, disrespecting Canadian history. It'll still be there the day after we become independent. I'll still celebrate Remembrance Day after we become independent, because those people did so much for us, and that's the reason we're allowed to be in here to talk about having a referendum to do this rather than training with guns and bullets like so many other countries have to do. So we've got to make sure our tone is correct. And this campaign, you know, you hear the term, it's cliche, it talks about winning hearts and minds, but it's very, very true. And we can win the minds. We can win the minds with rationality. We can win the minds showing the statistics, the numbers for the dollars and cents, showing the loss of freedoms, showing the complete overriding of our rights during the COVID period. But the hearts are another story. And those are the ones where the people are on the fence. I think most of the people who are on the fence, we've got that 30, actually it looks like it's gone up, 35 finally for the first time. That softer question might be serving us to budge that dedicated yes vote. And we've had 30% always that you're just never going to win them. That's a given. They were never there. You can't spend too much time on them. But those ones in the middle, much of why they're in the middle isn't because they're stupid. They've seen the dollars and cents. They've seen the lack of freedoms. They are worried about the trend of where things are going in the future. But a whole lot of them are held up by sentiment. And we can't dismiss sentiment. Sentiment is real. A sentimental vote for a no is still a vote for a no. So how do you approach people on that front? You see, that's where, when I watched the debate with Jason Kenney, and whatever people might think of Jason these days, a few things he isn't. He's not stupid. He's not inexperienced. He's a very skilled campaigner, and he knows how to move the needle. He's spent decades in this sort of thing. And he went straight for fear, and he went straight for emotion. He went straight to the question, right on multiple times. He talked about Memorial and Drive in Calgary, where we celebrate veterans. He literally gave the same old statement about so many people fought and died for Canada, we can't move away from that. Look, they fought and died and had the maple leaf put on their gravestones, absolutely. But they fought for freedom. It just happened to be Canada they were with at the time. And I value that fight, and I always will. But it is not disrespecting them to move on and protect the freedoms they fought for on a different front. It's through a referendum. So when we talk to people on that emotional front, though, and they throw that to you, they're being genuine. And Jason is trying to stir that up as much as possible. And they genuinely feel that way. So approach it gently. That's with the sentimental thing. They want to be respected. They may be on the fence, but they want to have a conversation. They have to move their heart to that place and understand that the rational decision is the better one, and they still can live with themselves voting for independence. They still are respecting their fathers, their grandfathers, or even their own time serving while moving towards independence. But these are slower conversations, and that's why I like these rooms. And this is what I talk about for those of you who've seen me at my speeches before. It's most of my focus. I think the core of our building this movement is the one-on-one conversations. Who do you trust more in the world? You know, not a bloviating media guy like me you see on a show, or a politician you see at a pulpit someplace. The ones that actually make you think about things differently the most, the ones most effective, particularly with an emotional decision, or somebody you actually know directly. Might be a friend, might be a family member, a coworker, might be some guy you don't even know his name, or you sat next to him at the bar for the last 10 years complaining about politics as it was. But those eye-to-eye, face-to-face conversations, that's where you move the needle. That's where you do things with people. You can change them more than a brochure can, more than an ad can. And we have to do the brochures. We have to do the ads. But these people who are sitting on the fence because they feel that sense of obligation, that emotional attachment to the concept of Canada, we've got to have longer, respectful, one-on-one conversations with them. That's why if you've ever worked other campaigns before, you know the main thing you do is get your candidate out there to the doors, face-to-face with people as much as humanly possible. All the technology we've got, you could have 6 figures in the bank account, you could have all the flyers and the TV ads, but the campaign manager is still going to drag their candidate out to those doors and get them meeting people. Why? Because it works. No marketing has ever been done more on earth than when it comes to political campaigning. And when every marketer says the best thing you can do with your candidate is give them face-to-face time with people, it's because that's the best chance to move them. And that's still a 30-second interaction, door knocking, relatively scripted, but at least people get the chance to look eye to eye at this person, shake their hand, get a feel of perhaps what they might be about. We're much more powerful than that. We're not selling a candidate. We're selling a concept. We're selling a future. We're selling something positive. But that's what we've got to train ourselves to do. We are the campaigners. And this campaign isn't necessarily formalized. It could be at the soccer game. It could be standing in a lineup at some government office. You got hours then, you might as well talk. All sorts of opportunities, look for them. And it's those one-on-one, face-to-face, eye-to-eye. And the number one thing when it's sentimental or even not sentimental, we're Albertans. What do you do when someone gets in your face and tries to tell you something? You dig your heels in, you push back. The best way to have an engagement with somebody, if you're trying to change their views, start by asking them. Open it up. Find out what their concerns are. Find out what is holding them back. And be genuine. You're not going through the motions. Be genuine. Listen. Whatever reason is holding somebody up from voting yes is a genuine reason, because it is working. It is keeping their mark off there. So listen to it. Find out why it's keeping from getting there. Maybe there's nothing you can do. You'll kind of determine that, and then you can start talking about sports. But maybe it's something you can talk out, or drop a seed, drop a bug, give them more time to think about it. Another point of view, realize that the independence movement aren't a bunch of crazed separatists who want to raise the earth and build a terrible dystopia in Alberta, because that is the image that Jason Kenney was painting last night too. It wasn't just the emotional, but it was the fear. He was talking, it's going to be terrible. Canada's going to shut you in. You won't be able to get your products to market anymore. You won't be able to keep your passports. The world won't respect you. Everybody's going to get hemorrhoids. If he could think of something, he was going to say it would happen to you post-independence. Well, why is he saying all those things? Because it works. And one of our soft spots, one of our weaker spots, when it comes outside of the emotional part, is what's your plan? What exactly is going to happen? And unfortunately, when somebody walks you down the what about road, sometimes it's a futile road and you can go for hours with them. Sometimes it's just a couple of good questions you can answer. But you got to arm yourself with good answers for those what abouts, because they can be important to that person. And there's areas with gaps we just haven't solidly filled in a plan. That's part of the disadvantage of having the decentralized group. We can't point to one particular group, person, or document and say, this is how it's going to be post-independence, because we don't know 100% for sure. The other thing is being honest with people. Don't blow too much sunshine up there, but they're Albertans. They got BS detectors. They'll know it. Sell it realistically. The day after a yes vote, a real yes vote, not this practice one this fall. The day after that, the currency will probably take a heck of a dip. Capital investment is going to seize up for a little while from a lot of companies because they just want to see exactly what's going to happen. We're going to have a short-term transitional, a bit of pain. There are going to be some people that will want to leave the province. There's going to be some fighting in the negotiation. But this is a period we would get through to a better independence afterwards. So be honest with people about it. We are going to make it better. We have all the reasons to show why it would be better. But some of the things Kenny is saying, they'll be true for a little while. But don't let it stop you from looking at the longer path. I mean, the thing to kind of gently remind people of is, just take some time and look at the trajectory and how the path looks if we don't do anything. And pretty much all of those dire predictions for economic pain and loss of freedoms and all that are going to happen anyways, just perhaps at a bit of a slower rate rather than a short-term period of instability moving towards a better Alberta and I think a better Canada afterwards. That's the other part, and I'll just kind of leave off on that, is being positive. I don't hate this flag. I don't have a problem with other Canadians. I don't even mind the French ones. Ben's okay. We have our beefs, we have our regional differences, but I'm not doing this to wish ill on the rest of Canada. I don't want to hurt the rest of the country, but I want out of our agreement. I want to change it. I want to have our boundaries, and I want us to have our respectful relationship as different sovereign states across from each other. We can still be close friends, happy, better off, I think, in a lot of ways than we are right now. I use the analogy often, and it's because it's darn true. I get along a hell of a lot better with my first wife now than when I was married to her. Sometimes the relationship is just better when you've moved your different ways, and then you can have a new rebranded relationship with boundaries, and it's productive and you each go your own ways. We can do that with Canada. We don't have to be negative, and we really have to look at the positive, and there's a lot of positives. but there's also a lot of nuts and bolts and mechanics, things to fill, and there's a lot of work that Quebec already did on our behalf. They've been doing this a lot longer than us. We got to quit swearing at them and get on with learning from them. And that's where Ben's going to help us a lot. He's written an excellent book covering a lot of the things and the groundwork that Quebec's already done. A lot of the things that we should have already done, and some of the disadvantages we have going into this. There's some groundwork we still got to work towards, even if we haven't done enough of it yet. And he's going to share that with us, so I'll bring him up. And his name is Trudeau, but it's of the good strain, honestly. Don't hold it against him. And thank you, guys.
Yes, good evening. So yes, my name is Ben Trudeau. Am I related? Yes, 14th generation back to the first Trudeau that stepped in Montreal under contract of the King of France to build what is now Old Montreal. He was a contractor, married a girl in Montreal, and changed his name from Trudeau to Trudeau because he didn't want his rich family in France to know that he married a not so good girl that was coming from some prison in Paris. They were sending them to Montreal, and then nuns would train them, and then they would organize and marry them. So Trudeau, the other one, the infamous one, is from the first of the 6 boys they had. I'm from the second one. The third one, in fact, became the first mayor of New Orleans. That was founded by a bunch of guys from Montreal that went down the Mississippi and founded Chicago and New Orleans and all across the Mississippi there. So all that was French territory until September 13, 1759, which is a very pivotal date after 250 years of French people living in New France that became Quebec. They lost the battle of the Plain of Abrahams, and that led to the losing the territory to the English, and that led to the start of the Quebec sovereignist movement. That started in the early 1800s because the King of France was giving, the King of England was giving land to U.S. patriots who wanted to remain faithful to the king, and then they start giving land that has been cultivated by French for over 200 years. And farms. So the French rebelled and revolted and led in 1837 to the Patriots' Revolt, where that was put down by the English by hanging the 12 leaders of the revolution, including notaries and lawyers and politicians, and they exiled 100 others to Australia. And despite that, they were not able to shut down the sovereignist spirit of the French, wanting to keep their culture, wanting to keep their language, and fighting against the English and what the English want to change. So what they've done and what happened is that the English say, okay, we cannot beat you up because you're like, we were too tight with the Indians. This is where the Métis comes from. And the French developed that country without any war with the Indian, by the way. So we have to revise our history and not look at the American history on First Nation in this country, because they were the first allied of the French, and that was enabled to found that country. And basically, that led to the 1867 Constitution. It was mainly a peace treaty. So it was to formally separate the English from the French. The English took over all the economics from the French. So by 1900, the life expectancy of a French Canadian was 19 years old in Montreal, because there were slaves of the English in English manufacture. The English was controlling 99% of the manufacture of Quebec. There were 6% of the population. And if you were French, you couldn't even get a loan from a bank. So that led to the creation of Caisse Populaire Desjardins, who is now the largest co-op in North America. Now Desjardins in Quebec has close to $500 million of asset as a co-op. They 500 billion, half a trillion And most interestingly, they have 7.8 million members out of the 9 million Quebecers. So that makes them the largest and most powerful economic engine of Quebec. And that makes them, that shield them from a lot of stuff that we have to fight here, because we don't have that sovereignist ground in us. We people in Alberta never saw why their own tax and why they should take care of their own pension. Quebec, when the CPP came in play in 1965, Quebec said, no, we're going to do our own stuff. So they started the Quebec Pension Plan and the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. And today, the Caisse de dépôt control 500 billion as well. So if you take what the civilian Quebecer controls, he controls his asset in a co-op, which is Desjardins, half a trillion, and another half a trillion in this pension plan, in the pension plan. So Quebec right now, the people of Quebec, not the government, control 1 trillion of assets and of economic levers. If you look at the Quebec pension plan, right now the Quebec pension plan has again have 500 billion for 6 million insured. If you compare to the CPP that was started at the same time, the same day, the CPP have 700 billion for 22 million insured. So the Quebec pension plan is 3 times more performant than the Canadian pension plan. Today, Quebec, the government, Quebec and the pensionees of Quebec owns more assets in Alberta than the government of Alberta. They own the Cross Island Mill, it's the Quebec pension plan. They own the outlet at the Edmonton Airport, is the Quebec pension plan. They own the multiple buildings over. They own the Londonderry Mall in Edmonton, Quebec pension plan. They own towers in Calgary, towers in Edmonton. And they own all that because one thing that they had no choice to do to live older than 19 years old in 1900 was to take, instead of screaming and complaining and be poor us, we took stuff in our own hands. In 1957, when the federal government decided to keep the taxation permanent after the Second World War, after the first taxation, the federal tax, they say, we're going to collect our own tax. So they started in 1970. Why? Because already from 1900, they understood that the first step to sovereignty is keep control of your money. The first step of leaving your mom's and dad's house is taking care of your paycheck. So Quebec understood that very long ago. And they control all the economical lever of their province. And then that led to all the referendum campaign. In fact, today the writ fell. So today, officially in my lifetime, it's my my 4th constitutional referendum campaign that I'm living through. The first one, 1980, I was 8 years old. My dad is a PR guy, a speechwriter. Wrote 6 of the 12 white books that was filed at the Quebec legislature in 1978. And these white books are very interesting because these white books cast a vision. It was a 25-year vision of where do we want the province to be in 25 years. And you table them, and then once they're tabled, the only way to remove them is to table new ones. And I can tell you that almost 50 years later, Quebec still run on these 12 books. These are the 12 assertions of Quebec. This is what Quebec wants to become, and it's what Quebec became. So 1980 referendum that was lost at 40% for yes and 60% for the no. René Lévesque, the premier and leader, famous speech was very simple. He said, "See you next time." And next time was in 1995. But in between, we had 1987, where I got involved in politics. In politics party, you can become member at 14 years old. So I became member at 14 years old for the Liberal Party, provincial party. And we were involved in all the stuff with the Meech Lake. But Meech Lake, we knew they wanted it to fail because they put the last vote. We had 3 years to make it happen. And the last vote was on June 23rd. You have to know that Quebec do not celebrate July 1st. Never did. July 1st in Quebec is moving day. 80% of all the rents in Quebec, of all the leases, ends on July 1st. And this is because of the civil code. So July 1st, everybody moved. There's no fireworks. So the real festivities is Saint-Jean-Baptiste, a week before, June 24. June 24 is the real celebration, national celebration of Quebec. And if you want to piss people off, you link constitutional issue to June 24. Trudeau did it in 1968. He showed up at a June 24 parade in Montreal, and he received like beer bottles and all that. It was called, after that, le lundi de la matraque. So matraque, it's the stick that the police have. So during the parade of Saint-Jean-Baptiste, Trudeau was in a, and people started booing him and all that, and he just stood up and confronted them, and he started receiving rocks and all that, and he didn't move. He received a bottle by the head, but the police came in, and there was 68 injured, hospitalized amongst the protesters. The horse came with a big stick, and all parades for Saint-Jean-Baptiste were canceled until the early 2000s because of that. So then there was the 1970 October month, la crise d'octobre, October crisis. So what happened? There was some faction. Again, the separatist movement was not unite. It was all factions. And one of them, the FLQ, was a faction between factions. And there's some guys that kidnapped a Cross. He was like the Council of England in Montreal. And then after a couple of days after, they kidnapped Pierre Laporte, who was the Minister of Labor at the time, but mainly he was a money bag of the Liberal Party of Quebec. And sadly, Laporte died. But when they kidnapped Laporte, the journalist that same evening asked Trudeau, "What will you do?" And Trudeau said famously, "Just watch me." At 4 a.m. that night, he called 12,000 soldiers of the Canadian Army to invade Montreal. They went and rammed the door of 435 activists with a list that was given by the Liberal Party. And 435 activists were arrested in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. They were dragged out of their bed, rocked into and put in jail undefeatedly. The one that stayed the most was 14 years, 7 years without trial. So that's the cost of sovereignty, of separation in Canada. That's my knowledge of Canada. This is what I know. My dad at the time was a student at the University of Montreal, and he was writing the newspaper. And the next morning, he came, and there was soldier escorting him to his office that seized all of his filing cabinet. They emptied all the documents, every document. There was a chair of study that was studying sovereignty and separation. All these documents were seized by the militaries, and they held that military occupation with tanks in the street of Montreal and soldiers on the corner. The military would escort a school bus of English school, so the English kids could go to school, and they held that up until after New Year to make sure to scrap Christmas and New Year. Doesn't that ring a bell? No, with the COVID, they did the same. The same regime, same system. Now, I am not a separatist because I believe that Quebec has demonstrated that our constitution offers enough avenues to try other things and to take control and to take sovereignty of what we have. And that starts by our money. That starts by even our royalties. Do you know these days we're collecting about 700 million every week in royalties, and all the oil companies of the province have to deposit their royalties at two branches, CIBC Calgary, CIBC Edmonton. CIBC, headed in Toronto, controlled in Toronto. So every week we send $700 million of our money to Toronto. Just from Friday to Monday, they do between 2 and 3 million of interest profit that weekend. So that helps the Ontarian, that helps the Toronto people. We do have ATB here, as I know. More than that, we have 13 credit unions in this province. Why is that money don't stay here and managed by our institution? And this is my call in all that campaign. My call is a call to sovereignty. Again, I am not a separatist, but I'm a fierce sovereignist. No, it's today, with the writ fall, it's my third referendum campaign in this country. I did Charlottetown for the no. After that, I did 95 for the yes. In 94 with a bunch of guys. So we left the Liberal Party because we didn't agree with Bourassa's negotiation in Charlottetown. So we're 2,000 youth that left the party at once. We founded a new party in 94, the ADQ. And in the 94 election in September, we had the balance of power. And that balance of power gave us a seat at the table with Parizeau and Bouchard. And the question that was asked in 95 was our question, because we were not separatists. Now, if I do a parallel with the question that Premier Smith pushed, I have to be careful my word on that. I will tell you one thing, is that that question asked to use what is legal in Canada to separate. What is legal in Canada to separate is called the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act came after the 1995 referendum in Quebec and after the judgment of the Supreme Court of Canada. And then in 2000, the Liberals put it in law. By the way, when the Clarity Act was adopted at the Commons in 2000, the next morning, it was rejected by a law by Quebec. So the next morning, and this is the strength. This is what to be sovereignist is. You know that Quebec so far has received 4 judgments from the Supreme Court of Canada against Bill 101, which is the language bill in Quebec. You know that they're still enforcing it? You know why? Because the Supreme Court has nothing. What can they do? They say you don't have the right to do that? Okay. I still do it. And what they did, they changed 2-3 paragraphs, put back the law in place until the next judgment 10 years later of the Supreme Court, changed 2-3 paragraphs, put it back in place. 10 years later, now we're at the 5th round of constitution by the Supreme Court and on judgment by the Supreme Court that it's not constitutional, that we cannot do that in Quebec. So we just need to do the same. What can they do? They won't send the army. So we have to do stuff for us as Albertans. So that question, if we say yes, that question, this is what it will trigger. It will trigger because she decided to go that route. So the Clarity Act, usually the way it was designed, you do a referendum, once you have the result of the referendum, come and show it to us and we will scrap it. Well, what she's done right now, what Daniel Smith and her government did right now, is that, you know what? Instead of doing that, we will ask them permission first. But we cannot ask them permission first according to the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act had seven vetoes. First, they will decide the majority threshold. Carney already said that 50 plus 1 is not sufficient. So secondly, the House of Commons will judge a question clarity. And they have to, you have to remember that Alberta only had 10% of the seats in that chamber. After that, subjective I have difficulty with that word. The representation standards is subjective. So they will tell us that we need that percentage of First Nation, that percentage of Ukrainian, that percentage of and all the other LGBTQ and other group that they did define in the past 10 years and push through our throat. They will push it that we need to get majority in all of these groups separately. After that, we need a negotiation in the common approval with Ontario, Quebec, who controls 59%. After that, we need a Senate approval, and after that, we need a Governor General to approve. So this is what saying yes to that question on October 9 triggered. This is where we're heading. So my take tonight, I believe that what's very, 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 very important on what's happening right now, it creates discussion, it creates conversation. We have to get to know what's happening. We have to vote. We have to show up to vote, and we have to push them to the brink of breaking. And after that, we have to do sovereign move in this province. We have to kick the RCMP out. We have to have our own taxes. We have to keep our royalty here. So we have to. These are not optional. When I hear a lot of Albertans, a lot of people in the movement I'm running with saying that we tried everything, that's not true. You didn't try anything. Because when you try everything, you start by removing the money. That's the first thing you do. And when you see all the move that has been made since Bill 1 in the province when Daniel Smith was elected was I want a sovereign Alberta with a united Canada. Bill 2 was now, instead of just writing a letter to get out of the CPP, we'll need a referendum on top of that. So she added conditions on the contract that was easy to get out. So what message did she send out about that same day? She said, don't worry, I bark, but I won't bite. You can keep the money. And this is what they will work for. This is what the only thing that counts for them is the money. So this is where we have to start. So anyway, so I encourage you to, my book, I don't have a lot of copies left here, but I wrote a book studying out history, all kind of stuff. I know I went probably way over my time. Shane doesn't look very happy at me. So I encourage you to read my book, and I have a lot of details like that. I have like a step-by-step how to do and how to put the structure. I have way more stuff that I could say. I will stop there. I encourage you two things: to remain active, to keep on participating, to vote. I know it's super important, and to be encouraged by all the discussion, everything that all that kind of, I don't know what to call it, produce. And it's exciting. A referendum campaign is all exciting, and I invite you to participate actively. Thank you. Oh, Chris, I guess, sorry. We're not very good to announce the next one. Cory was the best so far.
Well, I thought you weren't going to let me come up here because you took so long. That's all right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is like the number 30-something of our Let's Talk Alberta events. Hey, Bill, I didn't even see you there. And it's been an awesome experience so far, traveling from one end of Alberta to the other, talking to people. The whole idea of Let's Talk Alberta was that we spent less time talking, Ben, and more time answering your questions, engaging with you, and hearing what concerns you have about the things that are upcoming that Alberta is facing. Because if we're honest with ourselves, the next couple of years in Alberta are probably going to be some of the most important that we've ever gone through. We're going to be asked questions that are more consequential than we ever have been asked. And the outcome of those, the consequence of our answer, is going to shape the future of Alberta for the foreseeable future. For many of us in this room, it's going to shape that future for the rest of our lives. So I would suggest that this is probably important. It's probably important that we start talking about these things. We have a referendum coming up, October 19th. The Order in Council was done today. And the referendum is a question on whether or not we're going to accept the status quo or take the next step to pursuing Alberta sovereignty. Now, I believe that something needs to change. I believe that the status quo isn't serving Albertans very well. I believe it never did serve Albertans very well, and I believe that it was never actually intended to serve Albertans very well. Shane often, actually every time Shane speaks, he brings up the famous quote that Clifford Sifton made on the steps of the legislature in Winnipeg in 1903 or 1904, or something like that. And if you want to find this and fact check it, you can find it on page 93 of Clifford Sifton Volume 2, The Lonely Eminence, it's called. It's Clifford Sifton's memoirs. So he says, more or less, we desire, and every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairies go to enrich our lives in the East, or enrich our lives, build up the factories and workshops in Eastern Canada, and contribute in every way to its prosperity. So even Clifford Sifton said in 1903, before Alberta was a province, before Saskatchewan was a province, that the Dominion of Canada wanted Alberta and the West to join the Dominion, to join Confederation, so that our stuff made them better. And it really hasn't changed since. If you spend an hour reviewing the history of Alberta's position within Confederation, and even a little bit prior to Confederation, it's very plain to see. Many of the problems, if not all of the problems that we face in Alberta, at the doing of the federal government, are because of these things. Why can't we build pipelines? Because we're policy locked. Why are our farmers Why are our farmers, why does it seem like they have a tougher go than Eastern farmers? Well, because the system was designed that way. You know, it's the facts speak for themselves. It's easy to make a case for Alberta sovereignty. It really is. And I believe that's why so many people supported the Premier when she campaigned on a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Now, to be crystal clear, if I believed that we could achieve sovereignty for Alberta, for Albertans within a united Canada, in which we could self-determine, and in a future where the consequences of the election, the consequences of the policies and the legislation that we're under are affected by us and us alone, I would probably be campaigning for a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. But I don't believe that's possible. You know, Ben and I, our path differs when we get past that point of taking control of everything which we can take control under the Constitution. And I love the idea of Quebec just basically saying, no, au revoir, no to everything. It's absolutely beautiful. But, and I want that for Alberta, but I don't want Alberta to be perpetually fighting with somebody else about these things. I just really don't. I don't believe that the federal government will ever actually leave Quebec alone and leave them to have their language laws and leave them, you know, leave them out of the Supreme Court. I think they'll continue going after them again and again and again. And I don't know exactly why. I don't think it's a power struggle. I think it has more to do with the people that benefit from these things. Who benefits when we're constantly waging lawfare province to federal? Bingo. The whole system is designed to benefit no matter what. When we're doing good, the taxes are they're making more taxes. When we're doing bad and freedoms and rights are infringed on, the lawyers are making bank because everyone's suing or getting sued. Do you understand what I'm saying? We live in a system that's not designed specifically for our prosperity. It's designed so that the governance of Canada, those that wish to govern us, can do so enjoying peace, order, and good governance. And Alberta has a chance to reset that. Like, we can literally flip the table on this. And what's being contemplated in Alberta with this question that's coming up, which is why it's so important to talk about these things, is for the first time in ever, Albertans actually negotiating their position within Confederation. Do you know that that's never happened in Canada? Never in the history of Canada have the people negotiated the terms of their own governance. In 1867, we had a law passed by British Parliament imposed on the Dominion of Canada that told us how we were going to govern, how we would be governed. You're going to govern yourselves like this, self-govern, but we're going to have like a king's representative, a queen's representative that ultimately has the final say on everything. And yes, you could argue that it's tradition. You could argue that it's just a figurehead, but it's still there. We never got to decide these things. And this is the opportunity that is more exciting to me than a pipeline or, getting rid of a tanker ban or any of these things. It's the opportunity to finally, as sovereign human beings with rights not given to us by government, but inherited through birth by God, to tell those that wish to govern the conditions that they're going to govern us. You want to be our government? Okay, this is the guidelines. These are your guardrails. These are your boundaries. And these are our rights that you will acknowledge and affirm at every turn. Otherwise, you're not going to govern us. And we have that right. We have that right as human beings, right? This is a well-respected thing in the international community. Our people is a people's right to self-determine. It's 2026. We're supposed to be so enlightened and so educated on matters of civics and law and all of these things. And we can't even grasp the concept that those that want to govern us need our consent to do so. And we never did that. So for the forever Canadian people, I would say, here is your opportunity. You want to be, you want to be part of something great? How about you become part of the conversation about actually writing a constitution for the people? What is it that you love about Canada? What parts of Canada do you love? What parts of this governance structure do you love? How would you like the opportunity to enshrine that in a constitution for the first time? These are big ideas. This is a very big thing. And this is something that, Cory kind of touched on this. People have been fighting for freedom for eons, since the dawn of time. And there's other countries, other nations, other regions on the planet where, in order to get to the point where the people reflect their will through a referendum or something like that, they've had to fight wars. They've had to endure hundreds of years of hardship and torment. The sacrifices that people have made and the cost that was incurred to gain the opportunity that we're about to have given to us on a silver platter. Maybe not quite so much this October, but certainly the next one. You can't even put a price on that. And here we are in 2026. And we're looking to the future. We're looking to this opportunity. And I am so freaking excited. I really am. I want that for every single person in Alberta. As a matter of fact, I want that for everyone in Canada. I want every person in Canada to understand that they all have this opportunity. This isn't just limited to Alberta. This is a concept that every Canadian could and should be internalizing right now. That for the first time in history, we have an opportunity to self-determine. And self-determination is not just going along with an act or something that somebody thousands of miles away imposes on you. That is not freedom. That is not sovereignty. And we have the opportunity to get it. So where do we go from here? How do we get from this concept that we're sovereign human beings, we get to choose the conditions of our governance, and we're going to get it? How do we do that within this system, within this structure that seems to be putting up roadblocks at every turn? We have all this hope. We're doing this referendum campaign. We're petitioned for a referendum campaign. Thousands of people are signing up as canvassers. There's hundreds of thousands of people that are asking the government to put the question to the people. It's exciting. We bring 43 boxes of signatures. And Mitch gives this statutory declaration, says, I hereby swear that this is what's in these boxes. This is the will of Albertans. They want the question. He gives them to Elections Alberta. This is exciting stuff. America is paying attention to us. Europe's watching what we're doing. They're writing articles about us all over the world because look at little Alberta over there. They're on the verge of self-determination. How do we get from there to a constitutional convention where we're doing it? Is it through a politician? No. Is it through the Clarity Act? Ultimately, no. Is it through some piece of Alberta legislation that could be changed or interpreted differently by a judge? Pardon me, changed by legislature, interpreted by a judge. It's not. This happens when Albertans, regardless of their political stripe, start talking to each other about this like grown-ups and advocating maybe not even for the outcome, but for the opportunity. We start talking about this, we shake off the stigma and the taboo of the dirty seppies, and we start talking about the opportunity that we have in front of us that people die for in other places, and we start from there. What is it about the status quo that you want to keep so badly, sir? And we listen. I still have yet to hear somebody give me a reason why they believe we should remain, that I can't turn into a reason why we must leave. Not even like we should or maybe, but must. So if we start talking and we have these conversations and we're diligent and respectful and we listen, we're going to get a very good outcome when we are presented with the opportunity. And I'm really excited about that. That's why Let's Talk Alberta exists. I'm hoping, praying, and wishing that our rooms become filled with people who not only disagree with us, but hate us. I want people sitting in these chairs that think that I should be in jail because I believe in Alberta self-determination. And I want to hear what they have to say. And I want to talk to them about it. I want to share my opinion and see if we can find some common ground. Oh, you want me in jail because I believe we should self-determine? Let me tell you about some other countries where you're not allowed to do that and how it goes there. Let me tell you about some other countries where people stand up to self-determine and they face a firing squad. Is this the kind of nation you want? Right? These conversations have to happen. And they're not going to happen on the internet, and they're not going to happen largely in rooms like this. It's going to be you folks who go out of here and you have either the motivation to start having the conversations and the encouragement to do so, the courage to face the inevitable emotional reactions from some, and then you change the world. That's how this happens. The United States gained their independence with a handful of people who are committed to freedom and opportunity. And I can tell you that in Alberta, we have, at the very least, 301,680 people who are very determined. That is a very big number. Imagine if 301,000 people were motivated and encouraged to go out and into the rest of the province, rest of Alberta, and start having the conversations. If we do, we win. That's it. So we're going to have I think we're going to have a 10-minute break. If I say 5, it'll be 10. If I say 10, it'll be 20. But we're going to have a 10-minute break. Grab I don't know if there's even refreshments here.
There's a Coke machine down there.
Oh, there's a Coke machine down there. Visit the washroom, do whatever you have to do. We're going to come back, we'll have a Q&A, and we're going to stay here and listen to what you folks have to say, answer your questions, hear your concerns as long as it takes. And so, yeah, I would ask that you're bold with your questions and your statements. If there's anything on your mind, if you think we're wrong about anything, I want to hear it. We need to hear it. We actually need you to talk about these things. Yeah, and that's all I got. So see you in 10 minutes. Thanks. I'm going to send a message to work.
Thank you.
Well, I mention it every time in my speech. Okay, folks, we'll get going. I'm going to ask Brad. I gotta get his attention first. Brad.
Very tight together. Thanks.
She's at the end.
While they're getting up here and Chris is getting up here, I've got two favors to ask. First one is Brad's going to go around with the donation bin. If you're able to put something in there, it would be greatly appreciated. This is entirely funded by people like you. Believe it or not, we don't have donations from Trump, even though some people think we do.
Yeah, but Putin.
Read it, read some.
So if you're able to, please put it. If not, that's perfectly understandable. The other favor that I have to ask you is the algorithms are playing havoc with us. So we'll put a poster out, and people will get the poster 4 to 5 days after the event occurs. And if you could go to either Facebook, to Let's Talk Alberta or the Whistle Stop, or to letstalkalberta.com, or to freedomcalendar.net. Find the poster for upcoming events, and if you know somebody in the area where that event is going to occur, send it to them. And ask them to send it out to a couple friends. And it's what I call the shampoo method. And before Chris says, yes, I know lots about shampoo. No. But it's like the commercial from the 1970s and 80s, the Clairol commercial. You tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. And that's the only way we're going to get the word out about upcoming events, because social media is really playing with us. So if you can do that, that'd be great. I will now turn it over to you guys.
Then what?
You answer questions.
Oh, does anybody have any questions? good.
Yeah, I'm just reading this writ here. Does that mean that there's all those other 9 questions will not be on the ballot, only 1 question?
No, all the other 9 will be there as well. This is now being added to that list.
Standalone.
The writ was a standalone because it's a new one being added to the existing 9, but the other 9 still are there. So call it an addition.
Yeah, there was an order in council for those other 9 earlier. I think it was in March or February.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
Yeah, it was a little while ago. I know because I got a letter from Elections Alberta asking if it's saying it seems as though you have been advocating for these referendum questions, and I was like, what referendum questions? I didn't even know. So.
It's still going to be its own ballot, though. That was
Yeah.
what was promised to us. So
Yeah.
Oh, so nothing on the same paper, but
it should be its
Yeah,
own
it
piece of
should be
paper.
another.
Originally, Danielle had said that it was going to be on the top as well. It was going to be the first one, but because it's a question on having a referendum, I'm not sure where that lies.
Yeah, we'll see. This is not constitutional anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I do have the order in council here, signed by Daniel Smith, and of course, authorized by the Lieutenant Governor, who tells us what to do. And it says here that the referendum is to be held separately as a standalone referendum on October 19, 2026. So technically, you will have the first one, the 9 question, then you have like another set, and they cannot mix both. You'll have like 2 ballots box, no? One for this one separately, and the other one for the other fruit salad.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Fruit salad. I love how he just tosses those little phrases in there so nonchalantly.
I have a question. I thought that the petition was supposed to be gathering the signatures for the people that want a referendum, and that the referendum question was going to be asked in October. Why are we having another referendum to ask whether or not we want a referendum for a future date?
Okay, so the question was, since the petition campaign was advocating for a specific question, why are we having a referendum to ask for another referendum on the question? Is that accurate? Okay, so the reason for that is because during the time of the petition campaign, there were a number of First Nations groups that went to court, and they got an injunction against Mitch Sylvester that precluded Elections Alberta from verifying the signatures. Now, what they claimed is that the referendum itself would impact or infringe on treaty rights, and so they can't do it according to the Constitution. So what happened instead? Yeah, there's many people that don't agree with that, and even the Premier says that the judge seems to have made an error in law and they're appealing it. But the appeal is going to go well past October anyway. So what they did is they said, well, the only way, this is what they've said to us. The only way we can give you your question is if we go around this by asking you if we can begin the process, including the consultation required under the Constitution, or so they feel, to have a referendum at a later date. So it's legal maneuvering, and it's equivalent to you watch Peanuts cartoons? Yeah. Okay, so in lots of them, almost every time, Lucy is holding the football for Charlie Brown to kick it, and then Charlie Brown goes to kick it and she whips it away. That's what the government has done. It's in effect.
But isn't that split hairs? Isn't it basically the same as this come October?
Okay. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this province that I do not understand. And one of them is the supremacy of First Nation. They subjugated already the government of BC, and it seems that they're moving eastwards to try to do the same. And I believe that it's an error to let our democratic processes altered by a minority with whom we already legally dealt with. If you read the treaties, it's very clear what they got, and what they got was an exchange of seceding the rest and saying, as long as you give us there, do whatever you want. The Quebec don't even have treaty, but the way it was dealt in Quebec again, the first move that René Lévesque did after his election was to say to the First Nation, I believe you are nations. And as nations, you control whatever you want on your little land there. But beside that, it's our nation. And it's a very simple question. It's a very simple way to know. It's just a question of courage. Because right now, when you see even the First Nation band that already won the stuff, they have 33 members living on their reserve. So now we let it, 33 people stifle 330,000 people stuff. And now the politic realm, the politic people of Alberta take that very usefully to twist that, saying now that we need to ask that minority every time we move if we can do whatever we want on land that has been seceded according to their treaty in 1887. So I'm very okay. As for the referendum, in our Canadian Constitution, a premier can do one referendum a day if she wants to. She doesn't need any permission. You don't need anything to make referendum in this country. And secondly, what I don't agree as well, even in principle, is that the government was not even involved in that petition. It was a citizen initiative. So basically what the ministers, they tell us is that you don't have the right to write a letter to your MLA before asking the First Nation if you can write a letter to your MLA. And this is, for me, outrageous. But we have to live with it.
We should all flood them.
Well, I just want to add a little to it, though. Yeah, because there's a lot of interpretation coming in. I've written a column actually come out this weekend on that, because it's one of the things destroying Canada is this judicial activism that has taken a seed from Section 35 of the Constitution and read in this giant amount of obligations that are not in the Constitution. Yeah. If you read Section 35, I read it on my show verbatim, as boring as it is, it's not very long. The word consultation isn't in it. Yeah. That's from a 2004 Supreme Court decision on a Haida case. So these judges keep reading in and adding stuff to our Constitution. I'm not as much one believing that the government wanted this to happen. And I do believe it's left them handcuffed, but the option at this point, I mean, they're appealing and so on, which takes forever, as you said. But the other option is to go to war with the judges and say we'll ignore them, because I do believe if they put it, she could put it on a question tomorrow, but there would be an injunction within a week because the judges were all appointed by Trudeau. So,
and here's the dangerous precedent that this sets. If consultation is required for anything that might impact treaty rights, I believe that an election might impact treaty rights because one government may be inclined to develop and explore somewhere where another one won't. So those could impact treaty rights. So now, do we get an election without a consultation? How is this supposed to work? That's the broader question.
I have one more question, sorry. So I was also led to believe that Premier Danielle has the right to overstep and have those ballots.
May I have your attention, please? The Badlands Community Facility will be closing in 15 minutes.
Again, that would be a premier telling a federal judge she won't abide by a federal decision. It would certainly bring about a constitutional crisis if we want to see one, but she can't override the ruling of a federal judge on a matter like that. There's different levels of authority in Canada. It would be a premier going to war with the judiciary. And I know Quebec ignores a lot of decisions and things, but that's use of the notwithstanding. That only applies to charter, not constitution. There's more things she can do. Perhaps she's not doing everything she can, but just to straight out say, I'm just going to ignore the decision and hold it anyways, or count the ballots anyway, would be very legally problematic.
Well, and the biggest problem in that is that the injunction is not to the government, it's to Election Alberta, which is by law independent from the government. It needs to be because they are the one withholding democratic process in our province. And because of that, she cannot even overstep of the general manager of the election. I don't know what's the title, the guy that is on top there.
Chief Electoral
Officer. Thank you. No, she cannot overstep that. But she could create another referendum beside it, but she won't do it. And I with good reason. I'm not saying that she's mistakenly not doing it, but I understand what. No,
She technically could for a little while.
she technically
until the
could,
next
yeah.
ruling.
Yeah, exactly.
And one other thing I'll point out, do you know why Quebec can do the things they do and take the stands they do and ignore the federal government? Because they've taken steps to make sure they can do it.
Yeah.
You know what the golden rule is, right? He who has the gold rules, well, Quebec collects their own taxes. They don't have to worry about begging the federal government to get their own money back. So they have the leverage and we don't, but we should. Yes, sir.
You talk about leverage, and I want to talk a bit about the perception of the separatist movement in Alberta. Because we've seen APD, we see Let's Talk Alberta, we've had Freedom Alberta on the state of Alberta rather as part of the petitions. There's a lot of different segments to this movement, and when we see the filmongering, we also see the lies about this. People aren't getting along, they're having different views and everything else. And I'm wondering if there's a plan down the road to sort of say, okay, Let's Talk Alberta is responsible for the communication, for letting people know what's going on. Maybe there's a group that looks after constitutional issues. I don't know, but is there a plan to sort of add a bit of cohesiveness? Because they're ripping us apart and saying, there's people that don't get along, there's organizations that don't, one doesn't know what the other one is doing. And for those of us that are doing the research, seeing the YouTubes and listening to all of you on there, we know what's happening and we know, but it's those other people that don't know, and they're getting it from the premier of Manitoba saying that we're doing things wrong.
So the question is about unity.
Yeah.
Right? So the question is, are all of the groups pursuing Alberta independence going to do something and each take a piece of it under one umbrella unified? And the answer is no. And the reason for that is because not all these organizations are the same. Let's Talk Alberta has a very specific and narrow purpose. Our purpose is to bring people together and talk about issues that are important to Alberta, to Albertans. That's our purpose. The Alberta Prosperity Project is supposed to their mission is supposed to be to educate Albertans as to the merits and benefits of Alberta independence. Some of the other groups have a different mandate. So our mandates aren't all identical. We're all going towards the same place. And actually, let me rephrase that. Let's Talk Alberta isn't specifically advocating for a position on Alberta independence, although our opinions are clear, right? But the overarching idea with our group is that we will share our opinions with people. People can share their opinions with us and we'll talk about them. That's it. So the organization doesn't advocate for a specific outcome. We advocate for the conversation that needs to happen around these things when the questions are presented to us. So the short answer is no, we're not going to all be together.
The community facility will be closing in 10 minutes.
The answer is no, we're not going to be all under one umbrella. The other reason for that is if something happens with one organization and there's a problem and they can't continue, well, now we need a whole bunch of other ones that can, right? So we need many. What did you say? Shane used the example of a hydra. I don't know about hydra is the best one, but you get the idea.
It's a good hydra.
A good hydra.
But you need a cohesive message, all of you.
Well,
Or it will fail.
what's the message? What is the cohesive
You're
message?
all saying, but you all need to come together and say it.
It's not going to happen.
No, it won't. If it was one person, it would. But our message isn't the same.
It's pretty much the same.
My message-
Listen to all of you, it's very close.
In the 1995 referendum, and it was even within the question, what we've done, we were three-party, and it was called the three-party agreement between us, the ADQ, who are a bunch of youth, and then the PQ and the Bloc. And it was clear that we all drive our campaign under the same question, but it was three campaigns running entirely independently. So us, the ADQ, would do our own stuff, the PQ would do their own stuff, and the Bloc was doing their own stuff. So I believe it's possible.
Way different population base in Quebec.
Sorry?
Way different population.
population.
Well, I don't really understand the concern. Is the concern that if we're not under one umbrella, that people aren't going to pursue?
Yeah.
Why would that be? Why would that be? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's all sorts of different groups that have similar opinions in similar places they want to go. They don't all have to be exactly the same, right?
The main thing we got, as long as we're unified on pushing people towards the same mark on the ballot, that's the most important part. Like we're not talking about 20 candidates, 20 concepts or things like that. There's A and B. And as long as all these groups, even if they're doing it different ways, as long as they're all pushing people to vote B, we're unified in that sense, and that's productive. So they can still be that group in that room and that group in that room, and people can be members of both groups. As long as everybody's moving towards that same end, I think that's the most important part, is getting everybody to vote B. We don't all have to be in the same group to do it, though.
I think there's some merit too in having the different groups, each in different channels to it too, because we're going to reach more people that way. So like Chris's group here, going out and talking face to face with all Albertans, not every third-party advertiser group or group that pops up is going to be able to do that or have the infrastructure or the volunteers to do that. But there might be groups that have ties to the city that can get in and talk in a different manner to people in the city that maybe people in APP can't do as well. Or everyone's kind of got a little bit of a lane, and as groups come on board, I don't think there's going to be another group that says, hey, we should go out and talk to all Albertans and try to get a whole bunch of volunteers and do this, because there's already an existing one that's doing a really great job of that. So those people will come and support that. So I don't know. I'm just kind of curious, what is the messaging conflict that you think we're having? Because we don't want to have that. We all want to be headed towards Alberta independence.
That's what I'm saying. What I hear is it's very much the same message. Let's work towards separation. So why aren't you all sort of like getting together and consolidating the message so people aren't confused?
1940s India, a very large group of people wanted to be free of the British. They wanted, that's what their goal was. There were Hindus and Muslims and atheists and Christians, and they're all individually unique groups of people pursuing the same goal. And in that case, nobody said, hey, we all have to be Christians or we all have to be Muslim to work towards this goal. We can have the same goal and the same desire for our nation, and we can do it from within our own value system and our own structure. And that's kind of the same. It's different in that it's not a different religious groups, but we all have slightly different ideas of what parts of this need to be done. And I've always been very, very clear that the educational component was paramount for me. It is the most important thing. I've learned more so the conversation around the education is critically important. So that's kind of my take.
I think my concern is the plan. If you don't have a plan for the future, all this talking is going nowhere.
Well, of course we have a plan.
Well, what's the plan?
We need to.
You're not telling us the plan.
Well, we spent 2 years talking about the plan.
The plan is to separate.
No, there's Sheila Gunn's book that's that thick. There's The Value of Alberta. There's 100 columns that have been written. There's study papers that have been done.
Community facility will be closing in 5 minutes.
We're here till 10, so don't worry. 9:20 now.
You don't have a plan.
Well, then it's invisible. There's a whole book on the counter that shows a plan. Okay, well, write a plan for us.
Elections Alberta is going to be counting the votes.
Yes.
And you guys are messing with a lot of people, pretty high profile people in political positions, and these people don't care about cheating.
How so?
Are you aware of how scrutineering works?
What's that?
Well, I'm just being serious. In an election, we can have scrutineers. Like, it's actually a pretty good system. So we use paper ballots. We don't use electoral counting systems in Alberta. It's all paper. You're allowed, and we will have people in the count, every polling station. You'll have a person there in the morning. They open the box to show it's empty, right? First thing. So everybody can look and see it's empty. They seal the box. You have scrutineers there all day while people come and go and vote. You have scrutineers there when the boxes are taken away, when they're open and when they're counted. It's actually a very good system. So I understand what you're saying there. Like, if this was behind closed doors, it'd be scary, but this is a very, very difficult system to rig the election, very hard. And they're paper ballots, so you will see how they're done. It's up to us. We have to participate in scrutiny.
I disagree.
Okay, well, how are they going to rig it?
Well, I've worked at the election, and that what you described is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, for every polling station, the numbers are reported back to Elections Alberta.
Mhm.
At that point, I don't know what happened.
You're there when the numbers are reported. You can be there while they tap it into the computer.
Well, that happens in the Elections Alberta's office,
No.
that's independent of the polling
I-
station.
You're there. I've managed campaigns. You're there.
Okay, so then the scrutineers.
You're there. Every contingency, because elections have been rigged all over the world. That's one of the beautiful things. It's all of the tricks have been found and many have been accounted for. So things even like that, there are people able to watch every step because they're not just going to say, here's the count, and then we'll leave it to one person to transfer it to the office. You were there to watch every single step of it, and you have the right to. And it's important, but you can, I promise. Or I don't know what else I can say.
Young man at the front here.
So if the referendum does pass and we do go independent, are we gonna stick with the justice court, like Supreme Court right now? Because if we do, could they affect us being independent and force decisions do we want to remain independent or be able to sustain ourselves as independent? Could they affect that as in stop it or shut it down?
No. So the question was, once Alberta becomes independent, would we still use the same Supreme Court? No, the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of Canada, and they interpret the law and the Constitution of Canada specifically. My vision would be that an independent Alberta, the people would come together, and in their Constitution, they would enshrine the manner in which their judiciary would function. And perhaps we have elected judges, something like that. I don't know. It's the opportunity we have to decide. But no, the Supreme Court of Canada would not have input at that point.
So you're just disconnected from the Supreme Court?
Completely disconnected. An independent Alberta would be completely rejecting the Canadian Constitution and anything in it, including Canadian law. Yeah.
I have a question. Okay, the ballots that are being seized right now.
Sorry, if you don't mind, if you guys can just keep your conversations till after so we can hear, everyone can hear.
If you said the appeal could take a long time, right? But is it still happening? Could it be possible that we win the appeal and that question becomes a binding question?
It is possible. An
Even
appeal,
if it's a year or two from now?
an appeal is going to go before an appeals court, which will be 3 judges, and gives it actually a much better scrutiny than the one appointed judge. There is a very realistic chance that the appeals court will say that ruling was invalid, it was incorrect, and will now begin the process of unsealing and counting all of those petition ballots.
And if they're counted, then it becomes a binding referendum.
It could very well, but that would be a year in some.
Referendum are not binding in Alberta.
Was that?
Referendum are not binding in
A
Alberta.
citizen's
Well,
one is binding, right? A citizen's one is
No,
binding.
they
It
changed
means
that.
it could be a Clarity Act compliant, potentially, question, because at
Yes.
that point, it was following the rules initially that were laid out. But it would go back to the original intent, before the judge intervened.
I thought a citizen referendum was a binding one.
No,
Not
they
necessarily.
removed the binding part. It is
May I
not
have your attention, please? The Badlands Community Facility is now closed. We reopen tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night. Trying to signal something in the corner.
Sorry, this lady over here has been waiting for a bit.
Yeah, I want to kind of go back to the referendum on the referendums. So if we would say vote for option B, which is to have the government start the process, how much power does the government have to then stop the process at that point?
All of it.
As much as we let them have.
So we're basically, no matter which way we vote, we have lost control.
I think it comes down to the will of the people. And it's, to me, it hasn't changed what October 19th means to us, even though it was a little bit disheartening to have a referendum on a referendum. Still on October 19th, we need to win it with an overwhelming majority. And that's what gives us our power and puts the government on notice.
And do we trust them that they will?
Well, there's two different concepts here. The one is that we rely on government to respect the will of the people. That's the first thing. And that's kind of where we have to start in a democracy, is we have to rely on them to do that. There is benefit for them to do it, because if they know the majority wants to go a certain direction and they don't get in front of that, they won't get elected and they don't have power. So there is a benefit for them to do what we want. When it comes specifically to the referendum, they removed the part about it being binding on government. It used to be binding on government, but they got to select the final question and the timing. Now they've removed that. So that means that it actually puts it back on us, so that we have to stay involved and make sure that the government does what we want them to do. And that means, unfortunately, becoming involved in the process. That's the first part. The second part is that the will of the people actually exists outside of government. And if a large enough group of people want something, it is irrelevant what the government wants, because that large group of people has the ability to get rid of any government they want, right? So there's two schools of thought there, and they both unfortunately require a lot of civic participation and a lot of knowing the paths that have to be taken. So we haven't lost control, is what I'm getting at. Very back.
So this question is online. It's from the real Stephen Jensen. And the question is, with the order in council being dropped, do election financing rules start immediately, or is a referendum a different category from the election?
No, election finance rules are in effect, and that's why I'm very clear that Let's Talk Alberta, while we share our opinions, we're not advocating for an outcome. We are advocating for a discussion around this within this conversation. So there are other groups out there that will tell you, hey, you should vote this way because of this. I'm telling you, this is what we need to talk about, and we need to get the information and educate ourselves around these issues so that we know what to do when it comes polling time. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
In your sessions around the province, are you hearing a common concern or a common question in different places?
Yeah, I think the most common one I hear is pensions. Yeah, that's the number one. It's
the big one.
Yeah.
And policing?
Policing, not so much, but it does come up. Pensions is certainly by far the biggest.
Firearms amnesty?
Firearms has actually come up again now because there's a lot of buzz around the provincial firearms registry and licensing and stuff like that. So we have been hearing questions about that. Yes. Yeah.
That man's been waiting for a long time too.
Yeah.
You were just mentioning firearms. I don't know if you know the podcaster, Unacceptable Fringe, I think.
Yes, Derek.
Well, I just got a text from him saying that Smith is backing out of the gun owners in Alberta, not standing behind them.
I got that as well, and I reached out for clarification, and the response I got back is there will be more information coming out in the next 2 weeks, and that's all we can tell you. So I think they've backed out from saying something right now, but something is coming.
So you think Smith has been co-opted by freaking Carney? The guy's pure evil, and I think she's bought out.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's more like, she sees things that we don't see. She is in.
She was kissing his ass there when she was.
Sure.
Like,
I don't like it either, but I'm not going to say that she's bought out or corrupted or something like that. I'm just going to say that there's more that she is considering than I understand at the moment. I don't agree with her kissing Carney's ass for sure. I think she should be taking a very firm, solid approach with Mark Carney and advocating for Alberta sovereignty, especially considering she campaigned on the Alberta sovereignty within the United Canada Act, right? But I'm certainly not going to say that she's corrupt or bought out. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What do you expect currency to be like that we get independent?
You mean the failing fiat currency that we have?
Yeah, is it gonna be?
It will fail anyway.
Alberta dollar, what is it gonna be?
I believe. I'm talking a bit on. Well, I've worked with Bow Valley for the past 2 years full time, doing a bunch of stuff with. And Brett Olin is a genius on that subject, so I'm not even. Anyway, I can't compare even myself to it, but what I can say is that currency nowadays, and I can say that as well because I have another company where I buy stuff from all over the world every day, and there's the foreign and this and that. I mean, the exchange system nowadays doesn't lock us anymore in one currency for any transaction. So I believe that in a sovereign Alberta, the creation of a currency is easier than ever nowadays. We can see it with bitcoins and all that. Mainly, if you do know the cryptocurrency, you can create it out of thin air. But I believe that we shouldn't be afraid of our currency, Canadian dollar, more whether we stay in or out, because it's going down one way or the other. Yeah.
And I think the common sentiment around it is in the meantime, like in the short term, we would adopt the US dollar because 90% of our trade is already with the US and oil is traded in US. So that kind of makes sense. And also I know people are fearful because of the Canadian dollar dropping, but once we are an independent nation, immediately we don't have those federal taxes. So you get a big pay increase on your paycheck basically. Plus all those hidden federal taxes that are layered into all the goods and services that we purchase right now are gone. So your money that you do make is going to have more buying power and go further. So I think that will happen that will help with the transition of anything that might be, up and down or a little bit rocky in the short term. And then we can definitely pursue like determining our own Alberta dollar.
And if I just finalize on that as well, that's the advantage of Quebec has with Desjardins, because 7.8 million Quebecers out of 9 has an account there. The day the fiat currency goes down, Desjardins as an institution can decide just to convert, to tell you every Canadian dollar that was in your account is now a Desjardins dollar, and you can still gas because everybody has an account there. So they created, they're shielded themselves of any currency discrepancy or exchange by creating that massive co-op where all Quebecers deal with, so they can keep on dealing with themselves.
Quebec has their own currency, you're saying?
No, they don't. But they everybody's member at Desjardins. They have one credit union, and everybody's member there. So once you have the bank account of everyone, if the currency goes down, you can say now when you log into your account, we will honor the transaction account to account with the money you have, because everybody, the gas station owner has an account there, the hardware store has an account there, the insurance companies have their account there. So basically they structure financially that they could keep on transacting amongst themselves, whether currency is solid or not, basically. Yeah.
Quebec has put themselves in a situation where they have enough assets within their own institutions that they control, that they effectively have a reserve.
That's correct.
And they could launch a currency right away. But these questions, I always like to bring it back to when someone asks me what will we have or what could we have, I always like to bring it back to what we know, right? Because I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what Albertans are going to eventually decide we want for a currency or monetary policy or anything like that. I can tell you have the opportunity to do it better, for sure. And I can also tell you that what we know right now is that our federal government has printed double the amount of money since 2015, I guess. They've reduced the value of our dollar and our buying power by almost 50%. That I know. And in that entire time, what have you been able to do about it as a Western Canadian? Nothing. That's the point here. There is no 100%, this is how it's going to be planned going forward, but it will change us from subservient and subject to someone else's decisions, and for the first time ever able to make our own decisions so that we can do better. That's the key.
I grew up in Belize, and we're in a small community, and we did that what Quebec was doing. We had our own almost like a credit union, but unofficial. And I'll tell you, they did loans, we had savings, we had checking, everything. We had our own money. We controlled where the money went.
Yeah, that's a normal thing. The states, the individual states, individual pieces of states had their own currency that their own banks printed, and that's the way it was for years. Absolutely. Online question?
Yeah, this is an online question from Andy Martin. Can you identify a governance problem that Alberta politicians have consistently solved better than other provinces over the last 50 years, and explain what institutional feature produced that superior outcome?
I'd have to hear
You want to take that?
Yeah,
Sure.
I can see one. ATB. Sadly, they because of scandals in the 80s, they decided to stay away from it and to create that black box that they didn't want to touch. But this is probably the most efficient tool that the Alberta government ever produced, because it's retail banking, to their citizen. And if it wasn't for the woke board that's on that controls that institution right now, it is, I believe, one of the best tool that the Alberta government did in the past 50 years. And of course, the most important is the 1931 negotiation to bring back the control of our natural resource. That's the number one move that was absolutely essential to make our province what it is right now.
I'm familiar with Andy. Andy is he is opposed to Alberta sovereignty, as far as I can tell from his comments. I'm trying to wrap my head around that question. I think what Andy's getting at is that, has a provincial government done anything actually better in the past than the federal government? And that's an interesting question, but I think a more important question is, why would we be okay with not being able to influence any level of government, right? The reason why provincial governments have got away for 44 years with doing the things they did, with their BS policies that weren't really good, and the nepotism and all those things that led to an NDP government, the reason why they got away with it is because we weren't involved. Because we were lazy, we were politically apathetic, and we didn't take control for 44 years pretty much. And then we get to this point where they're so bad that we elect a pseudo-communist government and tank our economy. And then, this is the thing. I believe that people should be able to self-determine. I believe that no province, no region should be forced to live with somebody else's rules and be unable to change them. That is not democracy. And I also believe that what Albertans have seen, and what we've seen all over the world in the last 6 years, I believe that way more people are politically motivated and activated than ever before. And that's what gives me hope for a new Alberta, is that Albertans will be involved, because as citizens who have experienced the things we have, I don't believe that anyone specifically in this room is going to take their hands off the civic steering wheel again. And if we do that going into a time when we make the choices, we make the decisions, how amazing can we make our own future? That's the point. Oh, Shane is choking me out in the back. One more question, then we got to wrap it up real quick. Oh boy, there's 3.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies first.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question with regards to property rights, what we're seeing happen in BC with unceded land. The potential exists, whether I suppose it could be in a sovereign Canada, whatever you want to call that. Could we lose our property rights that we actually don't own our own homes? And what I'm getting at is perhaps the avenue around that is through the WHO controlling the events in case of a new scamdemic.
Here's the beautiful thing about property rights and an independent Alberta. An independent Alberta is the only way by which Canadians or Albertans will ever have property rights. We do not have property rights. It was never written in the Constitution. It was specifically excluded out of the Charter Rights and Freedoms. That's why the government can do the things they do with our property. And if you want to change it, you have to either amend the Constitution, which is almost unamendable. I'd say it's so hard it is impossible. Or you have to withdraw yourself from that Constitution, write your own, and include property rights.
So we really don't own our own home.
You do not own your home.
That's what we pay property taxes.
Yes.
And we're happy.
And what happens if you don't pay your property taxes? They take your home.
We have to.
Okay, we have to wrap.
Shane's saying we got to go, so thank you very much. We'll stick around after for any more questions.
We can be outside the front of the building.
Yeah. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
No, they'll do all that.
Now we get the 10-second tidy. Wow, Bill. Way to go. Way to go. Good presentation. Thank you. I just got to hit stop on that. Well, that's a wrap. Drumheller, Let's Talk Alberta. It was getting a little bit spicy, but that's the way we like it. we're looking forward to our next ones, and I don't even know where our next one is. So you're going to have to go to letstalkalberta.com and maybe put it in the comments. Where's our next event and when is it? And I'll check out the comments so that I'm not late. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for watching. Yes, I'll do the stumpy outro. Meow.